Better?
Yeah. Okay, so you are.
I am, my name?
Yes.
I am Julie Kerr. I am Olivia's grandmother.
Okay. So, where did our family come from, and how do you know?
Well, half of my family came from Poland. My grandfather came to the United States in 1905. He actually was supposed to, he was a manservant to an officer in the Russian army, and the Russian army was headed to the front because there was a war going on. Rather than go to the front with the Russian soldier, he went home, actually stole money from his mother, and began the journey to the United States. It took him a year to accumulate enough money to actually book passage on a plane, or on a boat. He ended up, of course, at Ellis Island, and from there he went to Buffalo. He worked on the railroad. He stayed in a boarding house and met my grandmother because her mother owned the boarding house. Then they moved to Erie in 1915.
And this was your grandfather?
This is my grandfather, John Alexandrowitz. On the Italian side, the other half, my dad's mother came from Italy with her mother. His father was born in the U.S. Unfortunately, my father died when I was a baby, and I really don't know much about that side of the family.
Okay. So how many generations can you trace back from your parents, and can you recall any names or places of birth? Well, you have a couple of places of birth, but...
Well, my mother was born in Erie, Pennsylvania. My father was born in Niagara Falls, New York. My mother's mother was born in Buffalo, New York. My mother's father was born, I don't know the city in Poland. That's as far back as I know how to trace. On the other side, my father's father was born in the U.S. His mother was born in Italy.
Do we have any veterans in our family?
Oh, we absolutely do. I had 4 uncles, an aunt, and my mother were all in the service during World War II.
Were these all on your mom's side, or?
This is on my mom's side.
Okay.
One of my uncles was taken prisoner and died in a Japanese war camp.
And your mom fought in the...
My mom was a secretary.
Oh.
And my father actually was also in the Navy. I was born in a naval hospital in Philadelphia. And my mother joked that they paid her to take me out of the hospital. It was probably dependent pay, but she joked that they gave her $13 to take me out of the hospital. And then when I was 13 days old, my mother and grandmother brought me to Erie, Pennsylvania, where I've lived all my life.
And both your parents had moved to Erie? Like, had they met in Erie? Or?
My father and mother met while they were both in the Navy, and my father died when I was 18 months old. He was still in the Navy when my mother brought me back to Erie.
Okay. So do you have any other stories about our family?
Oh gosh, I think we were kind of uninteresting. No, I don't have any other fun stories to tell. Just kind of an interesting... I guess the stories about my grandfather were most interesting. How hard he fought to come to the United States, how important it was for him, and raise his children, his 10 children, in the United States.
Did he have his children after he moved from Poland, or?
Yes, after he moved from Poland. He and my grandmother got married in 1915, and they had 10 children. 6 boys and 6 girls, and he supported them by being a shoemaker, particularly during the Depression. That was how he supported his family. His children went to work on farms, and they helped the family by giving the money to my grandfather. Can't think of anything else.
Do we have any genealogical records?
You know, my uncle did do extensive work on it. I don't know what happened to it when he passed away last spring. I do know that he did trace back that the Alexanderwitzes, there was a duke. They were related to a duke many generations before.
That's cool.
That's as far as I know. Hope this helps.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Now,
Okay, so you are my dad, just for reference, Mr. Girl. And where did our family come from, and how do you know?
So, my family immigrated from Italy. My dad came over to Canada first. Some relatives that he knew started a new life in Canada, and he came over to look for work and try to figure out what he's going to do to sort of land our family in Canada.
What year was this?
And this was back in 1950s, roughly, in that time frame. And he came over and found a job, and then he sent over for my mom and my two sisters. And so a few months later, they came over on a boat. They landed in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then took a train all the way over to St. Catharines.
Okay. How many generations can you trace back from your parents, and can you recall any names and birthplaces?
So I can trace back to my parents' parents, obviously. Their parents. So my mom's parents were Nicola and Lucia. They were also from Italy, and my dad's was Carmen, which I was named after, and Annette, which my sister is named after, and that was his mom and dad. And they were also from Italy, and I think they were all born in Italy and grew up there. They grew up around World War One time frame. His grandparents, and then my dad actually grew up in that wartime of World War II.
What do you know? What part of Italy they were from, and did they your parents' live in the same kind of city?
They all lived in the same little town. I mean, that's how people sort of knew each other. They were from a little town called Bezzazza, which is in the Provincia di Avellino, and it's by Naples, Italy.
Okay. Do we have any veterans in our family?
Yeah, so my dad fought in World War II. Unfortunately, he fought for Italy and Germany. And so he fought for the other side. He was a prisoner of war for a number of years in Australia. And then after the war, came back to Italy, met my mom, and they got married, and the rest is history.
Do you have any interesting stories about our family?
Well, we have lots of interesting stories, but probably the most interesting is just how they immigrated to Canada. My dad coming over from Italy, and bringing his family over, and then how we basically immigrated to the U.S. from Canada. So it's kind of ironic that our families kind of both immigrated to new countries, for different reasons, but. It's, I guess all of us sort of looking for, a better life in a different country, I guess. So, so there's a lot of interesting things. Like I said, my dad fought in World War II for Italy, Mussolini, and was a prisoner of war in Australia. And my mom came over with my two sisters on a boat for, I think she was at sea for over a week, coming over from Italy, and then taking a train all the way from Nova Scotia to St. Catharines, where we
Nova Scotia is the far
eastern
east,
port, yes. Where a lot of Americans came over. They basically came over with just their clothes on their back and probably a small suitcase of clothes, and some other stuff that they brought with them from Italy. You know, they didn't speak English or the language, and they adapted. They worked hard. They shared a house with some. When they first came over, they shared a house with like 2 or 3 other families, just so they could get by. And they worked hard. They saved their money, and they built a life for themselves. Eventually, owning their own home and working, in factories and things like that to provide for their families.
Didn't Nonu help build the Skyline Tower?
He did. So when he first came over, he worked construction, and he worked on building roads, and the biggest tower in Niagara Falls, Canada, is called the Skyline Tower. He worked on the construction crew that built that tower there.
And so, do we have any genealogical records?
We don't, but a number of years ago when your mom and I visited Nova Scotia, we went to what's called Pier 66, and that's where all the ships came in from Europe that brought immigrants over. And there was a declaration of the name of the ship that my mom came over in, and the year and all that. So that's about all we have at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
All right.